Hi everybody. Today in class we are going to be applying the knowledge that you have of these basic rhetorical strategies and using that knowledge to do a casual rhetorical analysis of the message that you had in your podcast on Friday that you listened to on Friday. So what I did is I listened to a podcast that I did not give you the option of. I almost put it on the list, but I wanted to make sure that I didn't do an example of the assignment over something that someone in the class has already listened to, because that would not be fair. I want you to all have to use your own brains, and I want you to be able to apply what I'm doing to your own podcast. So what I did is A History of the World in 100 Objects, which is a BBC production, or BBC podcast, whatever you would call it. This podcast takes, as you might guess, 100 different objects from world history and then explains how that particular object tells a story or represents a movement, a shift in history. And the one that I chose, oh look, you can't see that. Okay, so the one that I chose was called Flood Tablet. Okay, so what I did is I listened to this, and as I listened to the podcast, I was taking notes. That's what you do when you're an English teacher. Every time I read anything, I read with a pencil. My old white-haired English teacher in high school, AP Lit teacher, we had AP Lit in junior year, so she got us in the habit of every time that we would read something, we would either make notes in the margins or we would underline significant points. We would label rhetorical strategies, or in that case it was called figurative language back in the day. And we would try to engage our brains with the text as we read. And the more you write, the more notes you take as you're listening or reading anything, the less likely you are to glaze over, the less likely you are to misunderstand the text, because you are constantly trying to make sense of it. Instead of just being a passive listener, you're being an active listener. So let me see if you can see my paper. But this, yes, okay. So it seems like if I tilt it, you can see a little bit better. But it looks like a bunch of chicken scratch because I did not have the transcript printed out. Obviously on these podcasts, you're listening. It's all auditory. So it's difficult to not lose your train of thought or to not forget something if you are just going to listen to this one was only a 14-minute podcast. So if you're going to listen to 14 minutes, you're going to hear so many different things that if you're not writing things down as you listen, you're going to forget.